What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about how we're going to go from having our full scale half sketches of our chess pieces to having a three-dimensional model of your chess piece. So let's get going on that. The first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to either use Adobe Scan to scan your images, or you're going to need to use your camera app to take a picture of your image. I can't stress this enough. You got to take your image from directly above so that it says close to looking like this, instead of looking like this where, you know, things are like bigger where they're closer to the camera and smaller where they're further from the camera. Okay, so when you take your image, again, just like every other time I ask you to do this, I really recommend that you stand up, you hold your phone as perpendicular to your pieces, your drawing as possible, and then take a picture from directly above. That is going to help you have a more successful outcome in the end. Okay, once you've done that, you need to transfer it to your computer through email, through Google Drive, through, you know, however you want to get your image to your computer. I've already gone through that process, and where did I put it? Okay. So I'm going to open up my image and bring it into here. Okay, so I want to rotate this thing around so that I'm looking at it upright. I've already drawn this king today, so I think that I'll draw this king now. And one of the things, it's not 100% necessary, but it is going to make things a lot easier. We need to crop the image down to like its smallest possible dimension. Okay, so that we get everything that we need inside of it, but nothing else. So if you are familiar with some sort of like a photo editing program and you have it and like that's what you prefer to use to crop this image down, by all means, you know, however you want to crop your image is fine by me. But one of the easiest ways that I find to crop an image without any special software is just to use a screen capture software. Okay, so on the Chromebook, that is the Shift, Control, and the Show window button, which is the one up top here. On a Windows machine like I'm on, it is Windows, Shift, and S. And again, I really want to grab just outside of my image. I want to grab, you know, everything that I need, but not that much more. Okay, so I want like the full 2 inches. I want the full height, something like that. All right, then on your machine, it's going to ask you to save this. Okay, so you do want to save it. So you can't just like copy and paste it, okay? You have to save it. So I'm going to name this, in my case, like King 2, all right? Recognize where you save it. My suggestion to you, especially if you're using a Chromebook, is go to my drive and then go to your DDE folder and save your king and queen within that folder there. I'm going to click save. Okay. All right, so now that we've cropped our image and saved our image, we're ready to move into OnShape here. So I have opened up my folder and created a new document within my shared folder that's named 4.10. We're going to take a sketch of the front plane. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw 3 lines, okay? So we're going to draw a vertical line, which is going to be equal to 4 inches, which is the height of our king minus the finial. We're going to draw a line, and all these are coming off of the origin. We're going to draw a line going to the right that's 1 inch. I'm going to hit escape to get out of my line tool, and then I can hit like L to get back into it again. And I'm going to create a line going towards the left that is also 1 inch, right? So these are our maximum dimensions of our piece. And again, this goes back to like cropping your image pretty nice to begin with, because we're ready to now insert it. And if our image isn't cropped well, then this becomes a little bit more difficult, this process here. So we're going to go to up here, we're going to drop this down. We're going to say insert image. Okay, and we're going to click on import, and you have to like navigate to wherever you saved this to. Probably in your case, it's in your drive. And then we have our image here. We're going to select it. So again, my image started pretty nicely at that edge of my drawing. So when I go to scale this thing up, I want my image to basically start, you know, at the bottom. And you can see like I'm a little higher there, but I think that I'll just let that be. I can like work that out later on. And I want the top of my king to be about there. And I want my center lines to be lining up mostly. All right, so yeah, that looks pretty good. It's not perfect, but not bad either. So we're ready to start actually drawing now. Okay, so one thing that you're going to do is either you're going to start directly on this line up here. You have to start directly on that line, but you can actually like change the length, right? Again, the overall height of our king should be about 4 inches. But you can see now I've moved that line down a little bit. The reality is that my line is 3.98 inches. That's close enough, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But I definitely want the end point to be where I want to like start drawing from. So we're going to learn today a couple different arc tools. The first arc we're going to learn about is a 3-point arc. So a 3-point arc is really good for something maybe like this, where I can select these 2 points, and then I can adjust where like that curve goes. Okay, so I can go from say like here to here. Disadvantage to something like this is that sometimes it will like bounce around. So like for instance, watch, I'll show you what I mean. If I wanted to like come back for another curve here, you know, it leaves me with this like really awkward points, okay, which isn't always great. My design there doesn't really matter because I'm going to go back to a line, okay? And you can notice here that like technically I should be going down to stay with my line, but I really just want to like keep things horizontal. So despite the fact that my sketch isn't exactly perfect, the sketch is like a guideline. You know, it's not the end all be all. All right. So for all of my vertical lines, I really want them vertical. For all my horizontal lines, I really want them horizontal. There's no reason not to. So let me show you guys a couple things that are called constraints. Okay, one of the constraints is a vertical constraint, which is super handy for lots of different things. But vertical constraints will take like 2 points or 2 lines and keep them aligned vertically. So now like as I move one, the other one moves as well. Okay, and I'm going to vertically align these 2 points as well so that they stay together. Okay, and again, like I can still move this thing down, I can adjust things, I can like move this out. But these lines are attached, which they need to be. And in my case, I really want things to be like even. One thing that you're not going to do is you're not going to connect your lines back to the beginning. You're only going to be covering the perimeter here, the outside, all right? So again, I'm going to grab my 3-point arc, and because these 2 points are directly on top of one another, because I use that vertical piece, I can bring this out and give myself like a really nice round. Okay, so another type of arc, let's see if I can figure out a good place to use it, is what's called a tangent arc. Okay, and tangent arcs, which are up here, and I don't really have a great place to do it, but basically what's going to happen here is whatever I draw, this arc is going to be tangent with the line above, which means that this line is going to smoothly transition into the next line versus it being more like where I can draw here. So with a 3-point arc, you do get more control over the arc, but you're going to get these like hard breaks, where a tangent arc is going to give you a nice smooth point. I can even show you that like on my my king here later on, my other king. I'll show you where I used one of those. But again, for all my horizontal lines, I am going to draw actual lines. So I keep picking those up, and I find that it's easiest to do the lines before I do the arcs, and basically define my arcs on my lines versus the other way around. So again, I start all these. They're all horizontal. I want all of these back points, in my case, to be basically aligned with one another. Fronts, that's not quite so. These two are going to align, I guess. Oops, that didn't work out. So I will vertically align this. And I can drag that out. And apparently my vertical alignment didn't work here. So in that back. Okay, so I really want like something like this. And you can see like how one's affecting the other right now. Take this one. All right, close enough. So again, now I'm going to start drawing some arcs. I want that to be directly on top. Here it's actually snapping to like what its true radius is, so that's pretty nice. I think I'm gonna bring that out to about there. Okay, and I'll just shuffle these lines back into that endpoint. Maybe not. I'm just gonna undo, shrink these lines a little bit. Then come back with my 3-point arc. So again, my drawing in the back is helping me here, but it's not the thing that I'm following, you know, completely. So get another 3-point arc here, probably for the bottom. And actually have this thing come into here. Okay, now here's like an example where like the 3-point arc isn't working well, right? The only way I can produce it, I'm falling off of my point here. So here's a good example of where a 3-point arc and a tangent will come in handy. So I can first like work on the top half of my piece with a 3-point arc. If I did my next 3-point arc between like here and here, and I come down, like that's not bad, but you are going to see like a ridge ultimately where those two things meet. So in order to make that just a tiny bit better, and in this case, you know, that wasn't too bad, but tiny bit better, a tangent arc will work out a little bit more. Again, I'm not going to have control over it because the radius is basically determined by this intersection here. But you can see like how much closer my line is now to what I was trying to do versus like what it was telling me that it could do. All right, so when I move on to this next arc, I'm actually going to have, oops, wrong type of arc, Control Z. So 3-point arc. This one I'm actually having kind of come up some, and yeah, I don't like any of that. Yeah, no, not a fan. All right, let's try putting a circle in and trimming it. Maybe that'll work better. So if this is like the center point of my circle, bring that out. That's not so bad. Maybe I'll even bring this down a touch because I want it to be a little bit more aligned down here. That actually looks pretty decent. I'm going to trim that here in a second, but first I'm going to create another 3-point arc, and I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom of my actually, part of this is supposed to be flat, I believe. So I'm going to draw a vertical line out here. Then again, I'm going to do like a 3-point arc between here and here. So again, I'm going like to the bottom of my drawing between here and here. So this is the tangent constraint. This forces these things to like be a little bit more clean, which that actually looks pretty decent. pretty happy with all of this actually so far. So let's cruise out of here for a second. This is all looking pretty good. I need to trim these two things down here. So I'm going to grab the scissors, cut. Let's give it a go here. So I'm going to click the check mark. And one thing that's really important here, right? Like you should have a closed loop. So this thing should be gray. If you don't have a closed loop, that means somewhere something wasn't connected to the rest. All right, and if you can't revolve, it really means that something is not connected together. So let's see if I can select my profile. Now I need to select my axis. Yes, okay. That looks pretty good. So there is the profile of my king. Okay, now these things can all get turned off, including the origin, I guess. So one thing I still need to add at this point is my finial. All right. So I actually want to turn sketch 1 back on, the visibility back on. So I'm just going to highlight this and click the eye, and you can see like my finial is back now. I'm going to create a new sketch, I guess on the front plane. So back on the front plane, which remember the front plane here is actually in the middle of your object. It's running right down the center of your object, which is what we need. So we're going to go back to the front. So from here, we're going to attach the finial onto your piece, okay? And again, this is the center of my system. So just because my finial is maybe not exactly perfectly like dimensioned, your ultimate finial should have a lot more like control over it, okay? The other thing too that I want to do is I want to push the finial like into the body of the piece so that there's a solid connection and so you can't see like the joint. So bring that like directly in somehow, whether it's like a point like I just did, or it could also be like you bring it down to wherever you want it and then you literally just like come down for a little ways. Like that's also fine, okay? So I do kind of, in my case, just want to come, this is easiest. I'm going to attach that to the middle point. I'm going to bring that up there. Again, we were just talking about those constraints, right? Things like the vertical constraints. I want this line to be vertical. I want this line to be vertical. I want these 2 points to be aligned with one another. I want these 2 points to be aligned with one another. Okay, and then that way, again, like when I go to adjust, I'm adjusting more than just one thing at a time. All right, so one thing that I can't really dimension or like use that for is the width. So I'm going to say like 0.25, and I'm going to copy this over here. 0.25, right? And again, the sketch, by having the sketch behind here, it really prevents us from having to do like a ton of dimensioning. But now this thing is symmetrical. It's about the center line. It's all even. If you wanted to add more dimensions, you certainly could. I'm going to finish that sketch at this point. And again, I can now turn like my first sketch off and you can see my object. So Shift E for extrude. I'm going to pop my finial out. We need to do it 2 times in both directions. You can only go forward or backwards in this program. You can't go like in both directions, which in a lot of CAD programs you could. So I'm going to bring this out forward maybe like 0.1 inches. Maybe that's too much. We'll see. Doesn't look too bad, especially later on. So I'm gonna put that out 0.1, right? But again, that's like in the front. So now I'm going to extrude again, and I'm gonna grab the back of this object now. Okay, make sure you're selecting the right side. Again, I'm gonna say whatever I said for the front. Mine's 0.1, yours could be smaller than that, bigger than that, you know, whatever you decide. And again, because we like went into the object, we don't really see these like weird, a segment there. All right. If you didn't go into your object, you probably see a little gap underneath of your extrusion, which we do not want. Okay. So again, there's my king, and you can actually see again the parting line where like these two pieces met. I wonder if I can fix that in Sketch. See, I think I already did a tangent. Yeah, see, it's already tangent. So even that doesn't really clean up our line, I guess, in the end for whatever reason. But so there's one of my kings. Okay. And if I go back to my folder and I open up this one here, you can see my other king. Okay, and I produced my other king in the same exact process. I had a sketch. This one I used Adobe Scan for, and I scanned in my sketch. I copied everything over, resized it. Here you can see that my neck isn't quite the same as I sketched, but honestly, I like it a little thinner like this. So I made that adjustment, and that's fine. I went through, revolved it. For this one, I decided to like try putting a cross on it. So you can see like my cross sketch in here. And again, I have lots of just repeated dimensions on both sides, trying to make it symmetrical. Then went through like that. Okay. So just as a recap here to review, today we have talked about taking an image, taking a picture of that image, cropping that image using like some really simple tools like our screen capture, bringing that image into a sketch in OnShape, copying from that image, using things like our vertical and horizontal constraints, the trim tool, the 3-point arc, the tangent arc, you know, the circle tool, lots of different tools here that we can utilize to produce something that looks a lot like what we've drawn. So that in the end, again, when we look at like our sketch versus our piece, you know, they're pretty similar. You can see my sketch here and here and here, right? They're not exactly the same, but they're pretty similar. So the last thing that we need to really talk about is coloring our pieces, okay? So you want to just highlight all of your different extrusions, revolves, everything that you've done over here, and we're going to say edit feature appearance. I would recommend avoiding the blackest of blacks because you lose all detail in your object, all right? Same thing really applies to like the whitest of whites. So like any of these really light grays make a pretty nice like white representation, and any of the dark grays make a pretty nice black representation. We don't want to use like the pure white, which actually I don't even see a pure white. They might not even have one, or the pure black. We want to be able to see general shape and everything looking nice in the end. All right, so that's true of that one. That's true of my chess piece over here as well. Okay, just highlight, right click, add appearance. Select one of the grays, and that will represent your black chess piece. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to watch a video on, if we haven't already, watch a video on drawing the queen. And then we're going to be going through these exact same processes to produce the queen. And I'll probably come out with a special video about how to decorate her crown a little bit more. For the most part, you're going to be following all of these same steps for a second time with the queen. Okay? Hope you guys enjoyed that today. Hope you enjoy having designing your pieces, and let me know if you have any questions. All right, bye-bye.